in contacting me. We pass around in our transportation committee a sign-in sheet. If you choose to let us know who you are and you were here, that would be great. And we'll get started. I also got in the mail information about workshops that AC Transit is holding for their change and proposed route and schedule changes. So there are cards up here. They start tomorrow. They're moving month of October. And so with that, you're ready, Chief?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So I'll call to order the Emeryville Transportation Committee. It's myself and Nora Davis who serve on the council, and I just am glad to have so many people turn out on a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Appreciate you giving your time to come and make comments this morning. It's really important that we get as much community input as we can on one agenda item. I know that's on here this morning, and perhaps that's why you've come to talk about Horton Street and traffic calming there. We do have many different items on this agenda. It's not just the one item, and some may be actually rather brief. And so because I just want to get a sense of who's here for which items so that I can arrange it to help out people who don't need to maybe stay for the entire discussion. And I will take public comment in just a moment, but I just want to understand who's here for the discussion of Horton Street traffic calming measures. Great. Okay, thank you. Others who are here for the EBOTS project? Great. And Federal Express? Anyone here who's talking about Federal Express? Okay, I don't see any people right now. A request from Parkside about a 2-hour green zone. Anyone here for that item right now? Okay. And then a request, we have 3 requests for a blue disabled parking zone. Joseph Benjamin is here. John Tan, I don't see right now, and Willie McGill. Okay. And then finally a yellow zone on Shellmount Street. Is anyone here for that item near Marketplace? Okay. If everyone agrees, I would like to take first Joseph Benjamin's item. I think it will be very brief, and then we will move directly to the Horton Street. Horton Street.
We'll have public comment.
And then we'll have public comment. So. Okay, thank you. If you want to turn your chairs so you can see better, that's fine. I think we'll be having some presentations up here also from staff. But any public comment at this time, anything that's not on our agenda we're not going to be talking about already. Now is a good time to address your public comment towards the Transportation Committee. Okay. No other public comments? Okay, we'll have a chance to comment on each item as we go. So with that, I'd like to jump, if it's okay with staff, directly to action item 3E, which is a request for a blue disabled parking zone at 4310 Adeline Street. Since we have one person who's here for that. Is there a
Serenity I don't see here. She's the one that had asked us to be on the agenda. She's the one that is coordinating and what the noticing is and those type of things.
So should we wait on this, or do you think we should?
Wait, Joseph Benjamin is here.
Yeah, Joseph Benjamin is here, so I wanted to honor his time.
I would like to move ahead with this item.
Okay, I don't have, usually there's an application with some additional information.
And I don't have
We
that.
don't have.
Maybe I can speak on it.
Would you?
We've received 3 of them,
Okay.
and they all filled out applications. They all have the required information, the blue the placard. And so we posted signs on barricades in front of all 3 of the requests. So apparently they're not all here today to speak on for the need, but it's they all have a need for as a disabled person to be able to.
If I could suggest,
Yes.
let's
Joseph.
just do Joseph and let's notify the other 2 people who made the request that it'll be on the agenda next month.
Unless we get some other
Right.
information.
Yeah, the one for Mr. Tan on 45th Street, they turned it in before the summer recess, and they've been waiting for quite a while.
I see. Well, we'll consider those other 2 items later in the agenda, if that's all right after we do item A. So, do you have a recommendation then to the council to approve the blue disabled parking zone?
I would move
4210
approval
Adeline
of the
Street?
4210. That's a tough spot there.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Mr. Benjamin?
Oh, I have a lot of things to say, because the thing is, right around the corner on Linden Street, University of California, that's where they all the people live and stuff, they all park on our street. You know, according to, you know, their parking lot is full, they park on that line street, and it's, you gotta park almost a block away.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming this morning. And with that, we're going to recommend that this moves on to council. And it will be on, I assume, the October 21 council agenda.
I hope.
I hope.
I think that those staff reports have to be in today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for attending this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and everyone else, thank you for your patience. I would like to go back to item 3A, which is a discussion of and community comments on the Horton Street traffic calming measures. And I'm going to turn it over to Maurice Kaufman, who is our Public Works Director, to talk about that. Oh, and here comes Ms. Collins. Good morning.
I don't know, do I need to start the phone or do you hear me? So we had a meeting on Saturday to discuss a community meeting for the Horton Street Experimental Traffic Calming Project. And this is the second one of the two that we're planning on doing on this topic before we bring a decision or a request to the City Council to make a determination on whether or not to proceed with an experiment to install diverters on Horton Street and also traffic calming measures. Just a little background, Horton Street is a bicycle boulevard in the general plan. Horton Street runs from 40th Street all the way up through to 62nd, and then Bicycle Boulevard continues north on Overland Avenue. Bicycle boulevards are set in the general plan and the bicycle plan to show that there are certain metrics you need to have to accommodate cyclists. In particular, we don't want a lot of vehicular traffic on bicycle boulevards or speeding vehicles. So we've been taking counts over the years, and we've actually exceeded the metrics that were established for bicycle boulevards. In general, we are trying to set the average daily traffic to be no greater than 3,000 vehicles. On a bicycle boulevard in this part of town, and also the speeding, we're trying to post a speed limit of 20 miles an hour. Right now there's a perception of vehicle speeding throughout the corridor, and we have exceeded the amount of traffic counts. And these are the counts that were taken back in 2010 when we did the general plan and the bicycle plan, and so you can see at that time we had already exceeded the metrics. So this is part of the general plan right here, or the bicycle plan that shows what you could do to try to accommodate the traffic and try to reduce the amount of traffic we have there. So there's various levels of improvements you can do. What we're talking about right now is potentially doing a level 5 to accommodate the diverting the amount of traffic that we have there. We've had some discussions over the years with the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee on this topic. And we had recently received some grant funding to try to come up with some measures on that street to do improvements. And at this time, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee is recommending that we move forward with level 5 diverters at 45th and Horton, and also at Stanford and Horton. And so with that, we'd like to hear from the community as to what the community feels about moving forward with installing diverters. So the way the diverters would work is at 45th and Horton, the proposal would be to allow vehicles to proceed southbound on Horton, and then they would have to make a left turn onto 45th. And if you're coming northbound on Horton Street, you'd have a diverter at Sherwin, and you'd have to make a left turn onto Sherwin Street to get out if the traffic were going in that direction. And then at Stanford Avenue, what we're talking about doing, and this is a little more complicated because of the geometry of the intersection. If you're coming southbound Horton, you would be diverted left onto eastbound Stanford Avenue. If you're going northbound Horton, you'd be diverted onto eastbound Stanford, making a right turn. And then if you're coming westbound Stanford Avenue, you can either go into the Novartis parking garage or make a right turn onto northbound Horton Street. So those are the two recommendations that the Pedestrian Advisory Committee made. We want to hear from the community to see whether or not the community wants to install these on a temporary measure, to see whether or not, and kind of track what the impact would be of putting in these diverters. So the other thing that the PPAC was recommending was to install temporary traffic calming measures on Horton Street between Stanford Avenue and 45th Street. And those could be anything from chicanes or speed humps, maybe median islands, just to give a narrowing effect and maybe a meandering effect to the roadway so that the vehicles wouldn't drive so fast. So those are the three things that we're looking at. What we want to do is decide on what to do on a temporary measure, and then we've got a grant with ACTC to be able to develop plans for the city crews to be able to implement these measures. So with that, we'd like to hear from the community if there's any concerns with diverters or any of the traffic calming measures that we've talked about.
Can I ask you, Maurice, how long would a temporary traffic calming be put in place? What's temporary?
Well, depends on how long it lasts with the community. I mean, last time we did temporary diverters, as soon as we put them in, we started getting a lot of feedback, and at the next city council meeting, we were directed to take them out, and revise. So it depends on what the neighborhood could withstand.
But the plan.
But the idea would be take counts beforehand, put in the measures, and then monitor it over a period of time that we feel comfortable with. And then ideally, if we like them, then we can put in permanent measures. It could be a year, it could be 2 years. It depends on what the city council directs us to do.
Thank you. And so I would like to hear from the public. I'd just like to know who's here first. I'd like you to raise your hand if you live in Emeryville, if you're a resident of Emeryville. Okay. And could you raise your hand if you're at the Artists Co-op, which is at 45th and Horton? Okay. And are there folks here from 1500 Park nearby? And then others in the Park Avenue neighborhood? Thank you. Great. Thanks for coming. And others further north? I don't know. Thank you. On Horton, perhaps. Great. And are there people from the business community here representing who work in town? Great. Thank you for coming as well. Is there anyone here from Novartis or Griffles? Okay, thank you. And I see Jeff Sears is from Wareham, farther north on Horton as well. What other business? I'm just curious what other business.
We represent the Sherwood Williams project.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Is FedEx here? Is that what the question was? I don't see them here.
You're double parked.
Okay, well, we are very interested in hearing from you about this. It's been talked about for many, many years, and I'll just share with you that my number one goals here are safety, making sure that we're reducing vehicle counts for the sake of our bike boulevard, and then also speeds, which Maurice mentioned. How we get there is what the question is, right, to be discussed. So with that, I'm going to take names for folks who, and there's some written comments I received as well ahead of time. Perhaps those will come up as we talk. So I see Brian. Are there other folks? I'm sorry I don't know everyone's name, but it would be helpful if I could just kind of take a cue.
I'm Todd Taylor with Griffles.
Great, Todd, thank you. And I see Diane. I see Rob. Anyone else who knows that they'd like to speak to?
Barry Terresco, 1500 Park.
Great. Okay, and I will take more. I'm sure you have more comments. Go ahead. Your name?
Jeremy Martin.
Jeremy.
1500 Park.
Great. And Sharon. Great.
And then Kevin Law, MA with Sherwood Williams.
Great. Great, and I will take another cue as well in a little bit. Yeah.
Brian Ward, Blue Star Car.
Great. And Scott, thank you. Okay,
Michael Murphy.
Michael, great. I know this is not the usual way we do things, but I like to just know that you're going to have a turn, so that's why I'm doing that. Okay, you can just speak from where you are as long as we can all hear. So Brian, go ahead, please. And I'd like to, I'm not going to time you. I see Charlie there, I'm like, oh, Charlie, I don't know. But I'd like you to be respectful of all of our time. So if you could please keep your comments brief and concise, and try not to repeat something. If you agree with someone, please go ahead and say that. But let's try and just be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you. I might cut you off if I feel like I need to. I hope not. Go ahead, Brian.
My name is Brian Donahue. I'm a long-term 32-year resident of the city. I'm on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I have a business here. I'm in the Emeryville Chamber of Commerce and sole proprietorship. I'd like to welcome everybody to what we in the BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, some of us are referring to this meeting as the Pitchfork and Torches meeting, because we're expecting a lot of negative comments to the bicycle pedestrian plan. I want to tell everybody a little bit about the plan. It received unanimous support by the City Council, unanimous, all 5 of them. They voted to implement this, to commission the plan and to certify the plan. We received a unanimous vote from the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, Advisory Committee. It cost the city $200,000. It's prepared by experts from, city planning experts from Alto Planning at Berkeley, the private planning corporation. What Maurice didn't sort of tell us very clearly is that there are 5 traffic calming levels that the plan calls for, starting in the first one, which is really minor traffic calming, and it goes all the way up to level 5. So right now, the boulevard is at level 3, and the plan requires us to move on to at least level 4 now, because we are in excess of the number of vehicles, which is 3,000 permitted by the plan. Every 2 years, we're supposed to move on to the next level if the previous level is not working. So it's supposed to be temporary measures for 2 years, a new traffic countdown. If we're over 3,000 vehicle trips per day, then we're supposed to move on to the next measure until finally, presumably, we hit level 5 if we weren't able to stop the traffic, keep traffic less than 3,000. And then the level 5 diverters would become permanent at that point, presumably. So we're at level 3 now, but the BPAC talked about skipping to level 5, for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is we're so far over our metrics already, and with the Shorten Lane project coming in, which will bring a lot more traffic, like 1,000 vehicle trips a day probably at least. And then of course the transit center is going to bring a lot more traffic. So we thought we should save money and time and just go directly to level 5, temporary traffic calming, and then study this. And so welcome everybody to the committee, and so let's start the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Todd.
So I'm Todd Taylor, I'm at Griffles, and we have properties from Stanford along Horton Street all the way down to about 45th, and at least a couple properties beyond that. And we have 2 major parking areas. The entrances are on Horton Street, one at Stanford. And it looks like the diverter is to the north of that, so I'm not sure how people would get into that parking lot. Then the other one is over by 4560 Horton Street, and that's the main entrance for that parking lot too. And I'm not sure, you're talking about temporary, does that mean 100% traffic is diverted? Or is this partial traffic diverted?
Those are great questions, if I can just respond. My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that a diverter does do just that. 100% of traffic cannot pass through. The other level 4 traffic calming that we looked at, either the chicanes or there were some other examples,
Sure.
speed humps or narrowing, would allow traffic to go through, but at slower speeds.
So in particular, you were wondering if you could get through access from where to where?
Well, we need to get from 45th to the 4560 parking lot from the south end, and then the north end, we have the entrance to our other parking lot, parking structure at Stanford and Horton.
Right.
And also just deliveries along that route too. There's some buildings that would not, they're isolated and they would be able to get truck deliveries, for example.
So everything would be accessible, right? We're not going to cut off roads, it's just the route would change.
Right, so in other words, okay, the 4560 Horton warehouse is in this building here. Right? You guys, this is Sherwin here?
Yeah, well that's one of the,
Right.
I'm talking the parking structure to the left of that.
So in this
Yeah,
area?
Yes.
Okay, so this parking lot would be accessible by coming down 45th, making a right turn onto, let's go over here.
I thought you said 100% of traffic is diverted.
No, well, the southbound direction is diverted left onto 45th. 45th, if you come down, would be diverted right onto.
Or show where the diverter is, please.
The diverter would be south of the intersection.
So it's Horton, south of 45th is closed on this particular map? not Horton between 45th and 53rd.
So people could come down Hollis, go down 45th, and then make a right onto.
Correct. Okay.
They could also come down Hollis and make a turn on 43rd Street to access parking.
53rd.
53rd.
Yes.
53rd works.
And can you show the diverter at the other end?
On Stanford Avenue?
Yes, please.
Okay, at Stanford Avenue, the geometry is complicated.
Yeah, right.
The idea would be, if you're trying to get to the garage here, you can come in straight in from Stanford Avenue.
Okay.
You could, if you're coming north on Horton, you would have to make a right turn onto Stanford. You couldn't go left into the garage.
So you can come down 53rd and then go left or right once you hit Horton.
If you come down 53rd, you go left or right.
Okay.
If you go right, heading northbound, you could go north, but you'd have to take a right up to Stanford.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking the other parking lot to the south of the parking structure.
South of the parking structure.
Right there.
Yeah,
Right
right
here,
there.
yes.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into this, you have to come in from 53rd or
Yeah.
45th. If you put a diverter.
There is an island right
There is a median in, there is a median in here.
there. So would that median go away then?
No, that median is, we're not talking about changing that.
Yeah, see, we couldn't get
You mean
that parking.
it doesn't allow you to turn into that parking structure?
Yeah, if you're going north on Horton, you can't turn left there.
If you're going north on Horton, you can't make a left into here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I think you're right.
So right now, everyone has to come south. So there may be the need
Yeah,
to
so
look
there's
at some
further
other.
complications.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, and if something else comes up, we'll go back. Diane?
Hi, I'm Diane Martinez. I live on 45th and Essex. I actually had a question about that ACTC grant in regards to, are there restrictions that would have it favor one level over another?
No,
What we're trying to do is develop a scope for a consultant to prepare bid documents for us to implement. It could be any level we decide.
Okay, and can you tell us what are the limitations in terms of when do we have to get this done in order to take advantage of this grant?
It's not a pressing timeline to do the work. So over the next year, probably.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Hi, Rob Arias, Eagle Eye Editor, also on the Park Avenue District Committee. I feel like
Speak up just so they can hear you down there too, please.
Sorry, I'm on the Park Avenue District Committee along with 8 others. And I think we're a huge stakeholder in this. We're supposed to represent, our district, and I think we should have a say, in how this goes. And we weren't not really queried to make a recommendation here. So I feel like there's an opportunity for us as protectors of our neighborhood that we should be able to step forward and make a recommendation as well on this. So I just want to make sure that all the stakeholders here are represented. And I would also like to see more data about, the bicyclists that are, not just the 3,000 cars, but the bicyclists that are, which directions they're going, how many there are, and, so we have all the data we can to make the right decision about this.
Great, thank you. Barry?
Okay, Barry Teresco, I'm the HOA president for 1500 Park Avenue. As you know, we're a 141 unit mixed use building with approximately 250 really diverse people in the building. We are one of the model developments that really formed the Park Avenue district. I like to think we're one of the bookends of the project. We have a really large contingent of bike riders, dog walkers, and urbanites who really do support the neighborhood. They are actively engaged in the planning for the new Sherwin-Williams project, as well as just life in Emeryville as well. We are opposed to any traffic calming measures that would impact street closures or diversions that have been talked about in public meetings. And where we're coming up with this position, we really feel strongly that bicycle and pedestrian safety on Horton Street is important, but that the city should really look at a level 4 closure as opposed to level 5 at this time. Traffic calming will increase bicycle and pedestrian safety, and we feel we don't really need to jump to level 5 at this point. Additionally, diverters should be considered in the context of a larger traffic study done in with Sherwin-Williams in mind, and also the possible redevelopment of the Banker Marks building next to our building as well. And finally, we feel that the diverter location at Sherwin improves the quality of life for one part of the neighborhood, but it takes away really at the expense of another part. We would see more truck traffic around the Banker Marks building, and it would negatively impact life at R&D Park Avenue.
Thank you for your comments. Can I just clarify, you said you're opposed to any traffic calming or just the diversion?
The diversions.
Okay, so that's level 5, but level 4.
Level
is
4,
something-
we'd be open to discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that brings me to another thought that I heard from staff before. I was not able to attend Saturday's meeting. I don't know how many of you were able to come on Saturday to the community meeting as well. But another comment was raised about what about looking at diversion at 40th Street on Horton instead of at 45th or at Stanford. And so I'm just putting that out there because I know that that has been discussed now in some, and whether, if you have a comment about that. And Maurice, I don't know if there's any more details to go into, but basically keeping people from going north on Horton from 40th, either from the Target or...
Correct. I mean, when it was presented at the meeting on Saturday, I was thinking they were talking about just for the northbound Horton direction, and I was thinking, because currently we have a left turn pocket on eastbound 40th, making a left onto Horton. So if you were to keep any of those turning movements from 40th onto Horton open, you couldn't put a barrier up. But in thinking it further through, it is possible to install a barrier to prohibit any moves from 40th to go up Horton. So it would essentially turn that one block of Horton Street into almost a one-way street. Although once you get into that street, that segment, you can go two ways. If you come in from Park Avenue, so you could still have access to that block of Horton Street from Park Avenue. There would still remain two ways in there, but you could only get in from that one side. That would really divert all traffic around to either Hollis Street or some of the other H streets that are to the west.
There's a slide with that. Which reminds me of if you've driven on Ashby in Berkeley through the residential area, you can't get off of Ashby, right? You can get onto Ashby from the residential.
Yeah.
It would be something like that.
This one?
No, the purple one. The purple one you were just at. There.
Traffic
there you go.
diverted,
Yeah.
northbound traffic diverted at 40th Street.
Right.
So it's just another thing to throw into the mix that we didn't present. Thank you for your comments, Barry. Next is Jeremy.
So my wife and I live at 1500 as well too. We weren't here for Saturday's meeting, but just as a resident, has there been any studies that would show how it would affect that block neighborhoods where the traffic would be diverted if it was diverted? Has there been any
There
studies?
hasn't been any formal traffic studies, although Sherwin-Williams is getting ready to start their traffic studies, and as part of it, they're going to be looking at with and without diverter scenarios.
Okay. So I think that if a diverter, then that's the level 5, am I correct?
Correct.
Then that should be mandated, that there should be a study to show how that would affect. Because that's going to greatly affect, because it's a very small zone right there. We're talking about, one street coming up and maybe 2 blocks of streets coming up to Horton. There's already a ton of traffic, and we know that goes down Hollis, especially on Fridays. I think everyone around here knows what happens on Fridays. People get off trying to get back onto 80, and so that can usually clog up Hollis. All the way, almost close to, I'd probably say before Ashby, if not before that even. So I could only see this doing that to a greater extent, but on a more consistent basis. I also second the notion whoever made it that right now, it does not seem, and my wife and I are bicyclists as well too. She actually works about 1.5 miles away in Berkeley, so she takes her bike to work. It doesn't seem to me that there is really any need right now for that, given, if it's traffic speed, that's one thing, but volume doesn't seem to be an issue, nor has there been any studies on accidents to bicyclists or pedestrians. Is it got to a measure to where there needs to be actions taken to be able to improve safety?
That's a great point. I think it comes back to our intentions when we put our bike head plan in place, to designate one street. There's a complete streets, program that we have to make sure that all modes are supported on different streets, but that we have priority on certain streets. So it's a good point that you don't, as a cyclist, feel, is what you're saying, I think, that there's not too much volume of cars for you to feel comfortable bicycling on Horton. You know, when I bike with my kids on Horton, I don't feel comfortable all the time. You know, they're pretty savvy bicyclists, but there's different levels where people feel comfortable. And I think the intention, I'll speak for myself, but I think as the council adopted the plan, was to really try and designate Horton as a particular bike boulevard that was to put bikes above the other modes at that, on that. So it may be a difference of perspective on that, but I hear your comments.
And when do you bike on Horton? Is it?
So I'm not doing it in rush
weekdays?
hour. No, I'm doing it more on the weekends.
On the
I
weekends.
bike on San Pablo on rush hour, which is not to be recommended. Thank you for your comments. Sharon.
Couple of things. One, at the meeting on Saturday, it was interesting to me that a few people said that there were no speed limit signs posted on Horton, and they were all 25 miles an hour on Horton Street. But also on Saturday, there was a particular diagram that was shown, it maybe comes from the study that's been done, that was sort of showed like a little, ideally some little green area that was maybe between Sherwin and 45th Street. And I actually wanted to go up to the monitor and show, I guess your question about, has any study been done about what happens right in that particular area right there in terms of the residents? And there are two of the artist co-ops buildings there, the Horton Lofts, right at that nexus, and the Sherwin-Williams right across the street. I mean, it just seemed that there's a great deal of impact to the residents right in that area. So, I mean, to me, this idea of the larger traffic study that's going to be done in Sherwin-Williams just seems to be, would be great information moving forward on this. And the other thing too, I don't know that anybody uses it, but isn't 45th Street also a bicycle boulevard? It seems to be. So, what does that do if you're turning traffic up 45th Street? And we also have 3 driveways that empty on, 2 onto Horton Street, from the artist co-op, and onto 45th Street.
Thank you for your comments. Can staff remind me, is 53rd Street also designated as a bike something?
It is Bike Boulevard. Bike Boulevard,
I think it's on Hollow Street.
Hollow Street.
Oh, I see, not west of Hollis.
No, that's not Hollow Street. I think we made that designation.
And have there been traffic counts on 45th?
Not recently. We're getting ready to take with the Sherwin-Williams.
For the Sherwin-Williams, okay. And can you explain to everyone the timeline for those studies, the Sherwin-Williams, or maybe?
Maybe. Charlie, what is the timeline for the Sherwin-Williams? Do you have it?
Well, it'll be done as part of the EIR for that project. The EIR contract is on the city council agenda for October 7th. So we expect to give the EIR consultant notice to proceed after October 7th. And then they will be engaging, I think, experienced peers to be doing the traffic analysis. So I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is. The EIR itself will take roughly 6 to 9 months.
Thank you.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
Maurice, when you do your traffic count, do you not only include cars and trucks, but also bicyclists and pedestrians?
Correct.
Is it full service street, we want to count everybody?
Oh, yes. They'll count them at the intersections.
Okay, very good. But all 3 categories will be very good.
And what's tricky is we have existing levels of cars and bicyclists and pedestrians, and obviously any changes that we make will change that mix, so it's a little hard to predict always, but hopefully the experts can give us some idea. The next comment is Kevin Ma.
Good morning, Kevin Ma with representing Sherwin-Williams. And as Charlie mentioned, we have formally submitted our application to redevelop the Sherwin-Williams site just a few weeks ago. And echoing kind of just Sharon's concern is that, we will be going through this full traffic simulation, traffic study as part of our project. And we just want to make sure that that data is being considered prior to us kind of even going through like an experimental diversion installation. So I think, as echoed in Saturday's meeting, the last thing we want to do is kind of, put in, implement something that exacerbates a problem somewhere else, and especially considering kind of, we're looking at 500 residential units, retail, and a 74,000 square foot office building. There's going to be a significant change to the traffic patterns that are going to happen out there, and for us to put in these level 4s and level 5s without fully studying that impact, I think that's just where we want to make sure that we're fully spending that time to understand what the future has.
And I think also from the existing residents and business communities point of view, perhaps it's important to have those put in place before new residents and new business are there, but you're saying as part of the planning, you would have it implemented at the same time as the construction.
Just to make sure, that's being implemented into the study.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Jennifer, given your remarks, what is your timeline to completion of the project? Ballpark.
So, if all the stars align, we probably would start construction, call it spring, summer of 2016, with just under 2 years before kind of the first phase of residents would be coming in.
Okay. Thank you. The next comment is from Brian over here. And I'm happy to take other names I have after Brian, Scott, and Michael, but I have a few other people who might like to speak. So I see Jeff and Betsy. And your name, sorry?
Bryce.
Bryce, thank you.
Craig.
Hold on. And Greg?
Craig.
Craig, thank you. Let's see, Bryce, Craig, and Brian, I see your hand again, and I'll see if there are other people who haven't spoken before. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. I'm a resident of Blue Star Corner, and I've been living in Emeryville since 1999. I was riding that as a commute for several years when I was working at 64. Traffic there wasn't too bad on Horton. I'd like to echo a lot of various comments that it's going to divert traffic in front of our building at Blue Star Corner. Can we show the map that shows where that is? Because it diverts traffic down Sherwin, and there's a red arrow that of course goes right in front of Blue Star Corner. And it does feel a little bit like neighbor against neighbor. We don't get any benefit from this really. So that's our building down there. You can see the 4 little lines. You can right there. And you see the big red arrow going right in front. Kids play out there. They also play in the terminus off to the right. So we actually have a lot of kids in that area. Increasing traffic there is not great. So I would have to say that I was opposed to putting in something that would divert traffic, hard divert into that area.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting, you mentioned neighbor against neighbor. I guess maybe because I don't live right there, I live in another corner where a lot of traffic goes zooming around at Doyle and 55th because cars can't get through either way there. It's a natural diverter, not one that was put in. I guess I see this entire thing as a neighborhood and hope that what we're doing is actually taking away half the cars that would be going through there now in the whole neighborhood. But I see what you're saying, that it moves cars from here, even if it's a fraction of the cars that are now going on Horton, it's still going to move them to your corner, your block. And so there's different levels, I think, to kind of see this, and I hope everyone can look at from both sides, not only your block, but also looking at the entire stretch here in the Park Avenue District in general. Scott is next.
I'm Scott Downey. I live at 1420 45th Street at the Emeryville Arts Co-op. And I've been in Emeryville many years. And been on our BPAC for more than 10 years. And one of the things about cycling is that it's really increasing a lot. So are pedestrians, who often are Emeryville now, getting off and walking. And so we're seeing this major shift in our city. It's becoming more like a regular urban place. And the connection for cyclists to West Oakland has really kind of blossomed, partly because BART has allowed bicycles to go during rush hour to and from the West Oakland BART station. I'm somebody who does commute that way with my bicycle, and it's just remarkably efficient. So this need for cyclists is growing because the efficiency to get to and from San Francisco has dramatically increased. Commute times are really down. The other thing we've seen on the Bike Ped Committee has to do with bicycle safety, and you can look at it statistically that when traffic speeds are over 20 miles an hour, the serious injuries and deaths really go up dramatically. If traffic speeds are lower than 20, it's just remarkable how all traffic seems to get along with each other.
For bikers or for autos?
For autos too. Autos stop in time, the lack of accidents at 20 miles an hour is pretty dramatic. And so one of the things about our north-south street for Bicycle Boulevard is it's a regional bike boulevard. A lot of people are starting to use it more and more. Anecdotally, if I just look at it, it looks like pedestrians and cyclists represent 30%. They are 30% of the traffic and growing. So I don't think this issue is going to change. I think there's just going to be more and more of bicycle and pedestrian traffic on Horton. And so the first order of business for us, I think, is safety, for enhancing safety. And any way we can do that is important. And it seems to me that the first most important way is to slow traffic speeds. That if we can do that, that helps a lot. We're at level 3 now. We could easily go to level 4 in many different ways. We could try a diverter somewhere. If we have a diverter anywhere on Horton, whether it's all the way to the south at 40th or to the north side at Stanford, any of those places would really reduce auto volume. But level 4 might also reduce auto volume, and we don't know that. And we could experiment with level 4 and see how auto volume goes down as well as speed. And I think there's no harm done in proceeding with level 4. And we have many possible selections, and we could try numerous ones of those and see where we're at.
Thank you for your comments. Michael?
Just a brief commentary. I've lived on Horton Street at 45th for 41 years. I've watched the transition of traffic and neighborhood and everything. And used to ride my bicycle an awful lot more. In the last 5 years, the volume has gone up so much. I've lost 3 cats. My car, because I park right on the street, gets sideswiped pretty regularly.
You're talking about cars, not bicyclists, volume?
Cars.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm just very conscious of the volume there, and also its impact on bicycling safety. I just don't, I'm always uncomfortable when I go out there, unless I'm picking times when there's not a lot of traffic. But the traffic is both increasing volume and speed, and the speed's the more, the greater concern. The volume is just, sound, big deal. But when cars are rushing through there, which they do, when they, particularly like weekends and stuff, they get in a hurry, they just barrel down there, and it's terrifying if you're, if you're concerned about your well-being on a bicycle. So the fact that there's some kind of diversion or slowing down is, to my mind, great. My real concern right now, that's what we're existing with, but very soon, that volume's going to go way up. And we're putting in place some kind of traffic control, and I would think that we would be anticipating that kind of volume, so that what we do, what we implement is suitable for how we're going to be using that for the next 5 years. So, having one diverter period anywhere on that thing would stop the through traffic. That's where the real damage comes through. The local traffic, if there's only one diverter, if there's multiple ones, then things get a little complicated access and stuff. But just putting slow down things, there's too many neighborhoods I've gone through with slow down things, bumps, that traffic is still, it's not really impacted. But a diverter works.
Okay. And you know, as I'm hearing your comments too, I'm really thinking about how we don't know where people are coming from and going to necessarily. That comes back to the data question, right? And you know, we like to think it's these people outside of Emeryville who are zooming through our Horton, and it could be, but you know, we don't really know where that's coming and going. But mentioning both level 4 and level 5. Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Sears. I'm with Wareham Development. We own a number of properties along Horton. I'm also the president of the Emeryville round, so I'm very aware of alternative means of transit. Now that's a means of transit that uses the roads. So I have two things to say. First of all, I hear in the discussion a big difference between the concerns about level 4 and level 5, because the level 5 it's going to alter traffic patterns, and I hear a lot of people worried about what that will mean, and I also hear that it's going to be studied pretty in detail soon. So that may be, the level 5 may be something that could use some more data. I would support Scott's position and say that it may make sense to try the speed mitigation right away. Again, all of this is purported to be experimental and would theoretically allow the community to respond, but even if you tell people they can't get off and on Horton as many ways as they can, it's unique because it has big, long runs without streets and stop signs, so you can go fast, and people do. So we would support that as an experiment, because I think the speed is certainly a big risk that's real clear to other cars, bicyclists, pedestrians, you know, so I would support that. The other thing I'd like to say is just the general plan is a great plan. It has lots of pieces, not just the bicycle, and the pieces work together. You can't implement one without moving all forward, and so if the goal is to try to put more bikes on Horton safely, it means the traffic needs to be in other spots, and we heard some of the diverter ideas will put more traffic on Pike Street, so that's a question. I don't want to opine on it, but certainly Hollis is it's the main street in the city, and right now a lot of Hollis's capabilities are taken up by unregulated parking. And part of the general plan also talks about things that can happen with parking, either taking parking off the streets during rush hour or metering it to allow it to serve people who are visiting as opposed to working there all day. I mean, the city was short on parking decades ago. It's helped ameliorate that a lot. So I would say you want to not just look at the bike piece without saying, okay, if we're going to put the cars more in another place, what should we do? What does the general plan say we should do in those spots? So I think parking on Hollis is something the Emeryville rounds talked about a lot, needs to be looked at now, like the general plan recommends. So those are my two comments.
Thank you. Very good comments too. Betsy.
Betsy Cooley. I'm on the BPAC. I'm speaking on my own behalf. I personally, well, I agree with what Sharon said about the impact on 45th Street, because while I live at Watergate, I work at the 45th Street Artists Co-op for a year, and I'm really pretty familiar with the traffic and how everything flows around that area. And I think it will have a really big impact on the neighbors in that area, and it will sort of concentrate it, whereas I would prefer that we start, as Scott said, on level 4 and see how that works. And if it doesn't work at all, it doesn't slow it down, and at some point maybe diversion is necessary. But I'm not as opposed to the diversion at Stanford. It's the one at 45th Street, but I personally disagree.
Thank you. Next is Bryce.
My name is Bryce Nesbitt. I haven't been around Emeryville in quite some years, but years back, I don't want to count exactly how many, when this plan was first voted in, I was on the BPAC and chair of the BPAC, and I designed the Emeryville round routes of the era as well. So I know the area very well. And I can say that the time that we as a BPAC voted to recommend the Bicycle Boulevard plan, we knew this day would come.
Here we are.
We knew that there were diverters needed to make that work as a Bicycle Boulevard right then. But there wasn't much traffic there. There wasn't the will to do it then. So here we are. I want people to consider that Horton and Hollis don't work as extra lanes for each other, as north-south streets. It's not like you've widened Horton by allowing both north-south routes to be active because of all the turning movements that you create. You create so many turning movements as people go back to Hollis or make a turn onto 40th that you eat up a lot of that capacity. I think in many ways that this will work better if you only have one single major north-south street. Imagine for a moment an even more radical plan, we'll call it level 6 for a moment, where at every intersection there's a sign that says do not enter. And so every intersection is a turning point back onto Hollis Street. Essentially all the numbered streets, the 59s, all of the numbered streets become lollipops to access the facilities on Horton. That would be the ultimate expression of that, and that would be a great thing to study to see how that works. And my suspicion is that it'll work out better from the traffic point of view. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the historical perspective as well. Craig.
Well, yeah, I live at 1500 Truck Avenue. I'm just concerned about the suggestions. We're all mindful of experimenting with certain modifications. But also, there's a matter of expense, especially ill-advised changes. And also, I'm glad that Sherwin Williams, representative here, spoke about the timeline, about any changes being in regards to the impact of the 500 unit development. I was in the city for many years, and I lived down by South Beach, Embarcadero, Main Street. There was times I couldn't even get out of my apartment at rush hour. So coming here has been very refreshing. It's very bike friendly. But I drove delivery and cab many years in the city. There's no way commerce can operate without illegally parking. Now SFPD knows this because it would make it unfeasible to get it. But the concern about UPS trucks in the bike lane, the driver would not complete his route if he had to go to the loading dock. The point is that if you ride a bike, I ride a bike some weeks, put more miles on than my car. So I understand the onus is on the bike rider to exercise safety and prudence when you're going up against 2 tons of vehicle. But yeah, I don't always see that. I've had a few bad spills until I finally did change my attitude. I'm very conservative now. But the point is that vehicle drivers and bike riders, it's really up to them if there's a UPS truck there to carefully go around if you're on a bike. Because they're obnoxious conveyance operators on either conveyance. And the important thing is that it's the expense of any considered modifications to the traffic. And I think it would be really advisable that maybe have really high regard for the impact and the timeline as to any instituted modifications relevant to the impact of the Sherwin Williams development.
Thank you. Do you support the level 4 versus the level 5, or you're not really in support of?
I think we should pause and stay at 3 and maybe consider really investing for the moment, not move on it.
Thank you for
Until everything is considered, but it just seems like such an expansive amount of data to have to consider.
Thank you for your comments. Before I hear from you, Brian, I just want to see if there's anyone else who has comments. I see John. Yes, your name? I'm sorry. Dina, thank you. And your name? Maya, thank you. John.
Thanks. I'm glad we're having this second meeting because I came to the one on Saturday and there were a lot less residents at it. And I think that the feedback today is a little more reflective of what those of us living in our county district feel about this. I appreciate what feedback is doing and the fact that we're looking at this, but I want to, I think Jeff spoke pretty well to the comments I made on Saturday, that I think we're not looking at this holistically. quickly enough. That this is bigger than just feedback. There's a general plan that has other pieces to it. And as somebody who lives right on 40th Street and who walks the entire length of Horton Street 4 times a day, twice with my dog and twice to the Amtrak and back, I've been doing that for over 2 years, and so I've had the opportunity to see Horton Street intimately. You know, it's bigger than just Horton Street. We're going to displace, as Jeff I think probably knows, we're going to displace all these people who are driving. And the reality is, although I agree with Scott a lot, the idea would be people walked or used their bike. As a public transit rider, I do that. The reality is that people drive, and whether they're trying to avoid the maze on a rush hour commute home, or whether they're trying to get out of Target as fast as they can or Bay Street shopping, 40th Street up along the bridge and back on Shell Mound, looking out my window down that view every day on the weekend is packed. It's bumper to bumper. And if we are going to do diversion, we are going to, all these people who lose their patience trying to figure out how to get home, choose Horton Street. I just see it every day. And they're going to hit this diverter, and they're going to circle back through this neighborhood that children play in, as Brian noted, that people are walking their dogs in, where it's not, people didn't move there intending it to be the thoroughfare that it's going to become. And if we're thinking about bicycle safety, one of the concerns I have with this, that I've thought about since I looked at this diagram on Saturday, is we're going to circle people back and then essentially unpark across Horton Street. And so there's going to be this stop sign cluster, you know what, and it's going to basically be all these people anxiously trying to get in on Horton Street because they're impatient, and then get out across Park Street to Hollis, which to me is even more dangerous for bicyclists in the first place. And so I actually very strongly support, you know, looking at the level 4, some way of mitigating it, but I do think that level 5 is kind of taking it in a petri dish and not taking the entire problem. Why we don't have synchronized lights on 40th Street to actually ameliorate traffic so people choose Hollis and San Pablo, why we don't put other types of, you know, earlier mitigation efforts into place. Speed bumps are amazing. I mean, I got off yesterday to go to dinner over in Rockridge, and you know, get off the highway, and Clifton Street has a speed bump every 20 feet. And it doesn't tell you that on the map, but once you bring Clifton Street, you don't drive it again, because it's like, I'm never gonna get there, I'm never gonna get there. And so people will learn it, I think, without us increasing harm to residents and other people, if we just take the natural progression. It seems kind of awkward to me to say, well, we just need to, you know, hit the nuclear button and go to level 5. Why not? Level 4 was there for a reason, right? It's intended to be the next step. So I would like to see us explore the next step. I think Sherwin-Williams, the plan that's there, it seems the very horse, you know, apple cart to move something ahead of what we know is coming down the road. There's going to be a lot of traffic implications with that. Doing something now and then telling residents in 2 years we need to change the whole thing again might be kind of exacerbating the problems.
Thank you. Next is Dina.
Yeah, I echo a lot of the comments that were said already, but I think a more detailed traffic study and look at impacts on the area is important. I know for the Novartis property, we have our entry to the parking lot is off of Stanford, and it only allows for queuing of 2 vehicles right now, so I worry about the little details like that that might get missed even in a larger traffic study. If there's a lot more traffic going, how's that going to impact people trying to get in? If the gate doesn't open fast enough, are they going to be sticking out the roadway, which I know is completely illegal, but still happens. So I think you, in addition to doing a larger traffic study, also need to look at the more detailed effects on the roads that are impacted. I also don't even understand what a bike boulevard is, and I think most people don't. And so just general training on what a bike boulevard is and what the rules are. I don't know how you get that out because you don't know who's using the bike boulevard, but it's even to distribute information to local businesses would be helpful as a starting point. But I don't think people really know how to drive on a bike boulevard as opposed to another street. And I'm having a hard time listening to this presentation to understand what the true goal is of what you're trying to do. Is it just to divert traffic to other streets? Is it to create a bike boulevard? Is it to slow down traffic? There's a lot of ideas, but I don't know that you're really getting a solution to your problem. You might just be creating other problems. You know, on Hollis Street, which I think it will be. I have a concern about that because we've had two horrific accidents on Hollis Street for our employees, and a lot of near misses, and so just diverting traffic to another street doesn't necessarily make a safer solution. All of that being said, I also think that speed is a huge issue on Horton Street. We've had a lot of near misses, especially on 53rd and Hollis Street there, that intersection. People run the stoplight all the time, they're speeding, and even though there hasn't been an accident there that I know of, there's a lot of near misses. And so I think also focusing on slowing down traffic, having more tickets. I know when the police is out there in force, it tends to help a little bit for employees, but it's only a temporary thing. I know you can't position somebody there all the time, but just speed and obeying general traffic laws is a problem. And then also, as you're studying and Sherwin-Williams is doing their work, I wonder if there's a way to divert bikes through, hopefully with the eventual tie into the pedestrian, I think, bike lanes that go through Emeryville to Berkeley right now. And is there a way to utilize that to maybe get, instead of this section right here, to utilize that more in a way to get bikes off the road completely and more onto a designated, safer route?
Thank you, that's a great list of comments, appreciate that so much. And I think there is a piece of education that the city really has imperative to follow up with, which is education of what we're trying to accomplish and how we think steps would get there. But there's also a piece of wayfinding that comes into all of this. When we talk about the impatient driver who's stuck on 40th and looking for an alternative, we don't want them circling in the Park Avenue district, but we also don't want them speeding down Horton. So how do we actually, I think, step back even from the neighborhood level to the city level and the regional level to say, how do we decrease the number of single occupancy vehicles coming to town? Just another meeting, perhaps. But thank you for raising.
You answered a question about what we're trying to accomplish, two things.
Okay.
Just succinctly.
I'll go back to what I think is to reduce the number of vehicles on Horton.
To what?
And also to slow down the speeds of vehicles on Horton. So the 3,000 average daily trips, vehicles per day is our level of a bike boulevard. And what that means is that bikes have priority on this street, that Horton is in essence, to be for bikes more than for cars in that sense.
I actually have a question for you,
Please.
Maurice, because we worked together on the continuation of Horton Street. And my understanding of when we broke through Stanford and made it a thorough street there was that it was to offset some of the traffic from Hollis Street, not just to make it into a bike boulevard. Am I misunderstood on that?
That's what the intention was. There was going to be a 30-year development of the Chiron campus. It was not going to be traffic.
And so we're basically reversing that, it sounds like. You're saying Horton was supposed to carry the overflow from Hollis.
Yeah.
And now we're saying, move it off Horton, let's protect this street and put it somewhere else, wherever that may be, whether it's Hollis or something else.
And I think, there's still a lot of development that's happened beyond the Chiron campus master plan. There's, and the eventual Sherwin-Williams. And so, the traffic will probably increase regardless. And so where are those cars going to go? Like you said, it requires a more thorough study and holistic study of the area to figure out what the right path forward is.
Thank you for that other perspective. Yeah, if Horton had never gone all the way through, we wouldn't be having a conversation about the next comment is from Mike.
Thanks. I spoke a lot at the previous meeting, so I'll just summarize since you weren't here at that one.
Thank you.
I lived in Berkeley for 10 years and in a home in which 2 neighborhood streets were diverted and all the traffic was sent to our street. There were city council people on each of those 2 streets, and we didn't have one on our street, and it became unlivable. idea of sending traffic that is intended to go east, to send it west, just something in my 5th grade brain says, that's not the way to do that. It's just nuts. And so we have, it just can't happen. Cars that are coming out Horton, 4,000 a day, tell them to turn left and go over to Emeryville warehouse lofts and circle around and go back the other way. It's not going to work. A lot of those cars are people, the city's traffic pattern directs them up from Best Buy and Target, big parking lots. These are people from out of town. We get stopped every day. If you're a dog walker, you know every day someone says, how do you get to IKEA? Where is the Amtrak? People get lost in our neighborhood. It will continue to happen. So that's just, it's just urgent that not be part of the solution. That being said, Horton is ridiculously over trafficked and too fast. I'm another person. My daughter lives over near the Rockers BART station, and I can tell you exactly which streets have speed bumps. And I never go on those, even when I'm late, even when they're on the way, to go around them to the street that doesn't have speed bumps. That's very, very effective. And so I think there are traffic calming measures that can be and should be taken. As I slept on this for the last 2 days, I came to the conclusion that maybe because the radical solution was on the table, not as much deep thought had been gone into level 4 creativity, because it seemed like there aren't specific level 4 proposals on the table. There's kind of a variety of options. And I think that the creative minds in the city can come up with some really great ways of slowing traffic down, reducing traffic down on Horton, short of saying, get it out of my neighborhood, send it to theirs. That's just not the way neighbors should be with each other.
Thank you for your comments. And I think what's missing from this map in particular, which is up here, is that there should be something at the corner of Park and Horton that basically says, no outlet, right? I mean, this shows a diverter, but it doesn't say what kind of signage you might have warning those 4,000 cars, actually, you're not going to get through at the next block, right? I assume that's part of this.
Well, there's already a sign there that says,
no trucks.
Trucks don't go up here, and it's FedEx, it looked like they hand out a map with Horton on it when you're hired as a FedEx driver.
Yeah, and just a different conversation, I hope staff has been working with FedEx. We had them at a meeting to talk about their routes that they hand to their drivers, as you're saying, to make sure that, and I don't know where we are in that, but that conversation started.
Yesterday they were using it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it has.
So let them turn left on 40th. I know there are problems with that. Don't let them block them at 40th. There's certainly problems with that. Maybe block them at Park, but then block them somewhere where they can turn toward the place you want them to go, not the other way.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I think that's really important. Do you want to respond to any of that, or should you feel like?
No, I think.
Okay.
Jennifer, you gonna comment?
There are wayfinding signs that I hope would go hand in hand.
Oh, that's definitely part of it.
Okay. Kyrie is next.
Thank you.
Jen?
My name is Kyrie Tan, and I'm a resident. I live on 45th Street, and I'm also on the planning commission. But I'm actually here today to represent another item on the agenda that we're here for, which kind of relates to this because we lived here long enough to go through the triangle neighborhood traffic calming, and I'm not sure if you spoke about that earlier, Maurice, but just hearing John's comments here really triggered my memories of what we went through in the triangle, which was we started out with an experimentation of more or less like a level 5. So we had traffic diverters. And at the time it seemed like, the right thing to try, but what ended up happening is exactly what you described, is very angry folks, neighbors feeling as if the traffic had been diverted onto their streets, and then we had cars that were confused and just had a lot of backup. And then what we ended up coming back to, I believe, is a level 3. Are we at level 3 or level 4? Okay, so we're at level 4, which we have bulb outs which choke the traffic down. We have traffic circles, and I'm speaking specifically about 45th Street where we live. And what we've seen is that it didn't necessarily decrease the amount of traffic, I wanna say it has reduced the speeds, but I don't know if you actually have any data on that yet.
We did monitor it, it's been a while, but it didn't reduce the volumes, but
Didn't
it
reduce the
it reduced the speed.
Right, okay, so, but the traffic levels have been the same. But what we're experiencing now is we actually have a continued problem of cars that run stop signs at the traffic circle, particularly where we live, right at the intersection. Our driveway is right at the traffic circle at Salem and 45th. And we're seeing cars that actually whip around the traffic circle. They'll either not stop at all, several of them do it a day, they just zoom around, or they stop and then they make that swipe around the traffic circle, and it's a very difficult maneuver. And what we're experiencing is that we're in harm's way just by the simple fact that our driveway is there and we have children. And we often see people park there and block our driveway to offload groceries. We have rental property there and there's no parking for them. And so when the cars are whipping around, it's only a matter of time before we see someone rear-ending either a car or a person there. And so the traffic circle in a way kind of precipitated other needs for safety, traffic or safety measures on our street anyway. And that's one of the reasons why we're here to not only to request an ADA curb parking, because that's something that we need, but we also may need to even eliminate some parking because it's too close to the traffic circle, and that's where people are whipping around about to clip either a car, a person, or someone who's bicycling, because that's also the bike boulevard. There's bike lanes there as well. So that's just something I wanted to mention, that we've been there and we haven't really seen, it's been positive, but there's still some issues to be addressed. As far as the experimenting with the level 5 first and then going down to a level 4, I mean, you just have to look at the Triangle neighborhood as an example to see how that can turn out on Horton Street.
Great, thank you for that perspective. Tim.
I'm a resident on Horton Street, longtime resident, and I like the idea of the diverters, and I like the idea that it's been a long considered plan, and the city is planning on going forward with that. I encourage that, and I hope that they do it thoroughly and do it in a way that they gather enough data and look at all the traffic problems and changes that will occur from this, so that then they can address the Sherwin-Williams impact with the extension of Hubbard Street and the entrance onto Horton Street. So I hope it's a thorough study and that it isn't anything like plopping down a diverter, giving it a couple of weeks, seeing how much chaos it creates in the neighborhood, and then reacting to that. I think that a thorough study would probably take a year or so, and it would include all the surrounding streets, and it would be quite an undertaking, and I encourage them to do that.
Thank you. That's great comments as well. Brian?
Okay, I just want to make one really pedestrian point, so to speak, and then a more larger point. There was talk earlier about the diverters would increase traffic on 45th Street, which is a bicycle boulevard, and maybe take the amount of traffic on that bicycle boulevard over the 3,000 limit, which it very likely could. But what hasn't been discussed here is the plan makes provisions for this, because there was also a traffic study that Maurice didn't mention earlier that was taken, traffic count, I should say, which showed more than 12,000 vehicle trips per day near the Amtrak station a couple years ago. The bike plan allows for the bike boulevards to have in excess of 3,000 vehicle trips per day, unlimited vehicle trips per day, over one block segments of the bike boulevard. It does allow for that. So that's what would happen here if we did diverters. Like for instance at Stanford, then you'd have a lot of traffic would be taking Horton Street to get to Amtrak, and that would be in excess of the 3,000, but the plan allows for that. Similarly, a little section of 45th Street from between Horton and Hollis would be in excess possibly of 3,000. The plan allows for that. So just everybody should know the plan does permit in excess of 3,000 for one block sections of bike boulevards. Then I wanted to also remind everybody here that the BPAC, when we were discussing the bike boulevard, wanted to have our bike boulevard here on Horton Street be the bike boulevards in Oakland and in Berkeley. Their bike boulevards allow for no more than 1,500 vehicle trips per day. Other cities are even less. For instance, Palo Alto allows for only 800 vehicle trips per day on their bike boulevards. However, the business community didn't like the 1,500 number, and so we doubled that. The council saw fit to double that, so that's how we arrived at the 3,000, double what our neighbors are. Okay, now I wanted to say something that's not being talked about here. There seems to be a consensus almost, you could say, about level 4. Maybe we should go for level 4 now. And it's almost as if like wishful thinking, like let's just make this problem go away, do level 4, and it won't really impact anybody, and that's good enough. The problem is, if level 4 doesn't keep us below 3,000 vehicle trips per day, we must move to level 5 in the future. And I posit it's going to be the very near future because very likely it won't work in terms of volume of traffic. And then on top of that, it's going to be exacerbated by the massive number of new residents on Sherwin-Williams, the massive traffic generated by the transit center project. So level 5 is coming, like it or not, no way to avoid it. So it's an unpleasant subject here in this room, but it's coming. So our only solution, the only way out of this, if you just don't like the idea of level 5 traffic coming, we have two remedies. We can change the plan, the bike ped plan and the general plan, to get rid of the 3,000, to increase that to some level much higher than 3,000. That would be acceptable, because then we wouldn't be in violation of our plan. We can't have a plan that's not being adhered to. I mean, the plan has to comport with what's happening on the ground. So we can increase the number to higher than 3,000, and we're going to have to guess what that number is to take care of all the traffic for future traffic for those two big projects that we're doing. So warning on that. It's going to have to be much larger than 3,000 if we want to have the plan comport with reality. Or of course, the other option we have is just to get rid of the Horton Street Bike Boulevard altogether. But then, if we do that, just everybody needs to know, we're going to be grinding off the stencils and taking down the purple signs. In Horton Street, we just revert to just a regular street. So those are the two choices. Get rid of the Bike Boulevard, increase the number of vehicles permitted on Bike Boulevards in Emeryville to something considerably larger than 3,000. Those are our choices if we don't like the idea of our future that's looming, which is level 5 traffic coming out of Horton Street. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd actually like to go back to some of the options that are available for level 4, which include, as we saw, the horizontal king, and then also vertical with speed humps or speed tables, and another one which is a pinch point or a narrowing in another horizontal. And I've had in email and I've in conversations with folks, I've heard of concerns, and part of my concerns about level 4, and one of the reasons I thought level 5 might be better, is because of that narrowing. The concern, and I think I heard this from folks actually at Riffles and Fardas as well, about head-on. That the cars having to slow down so that only one car can pass at a time creates another safety concern. And that was shared with me also by email, so I just thought I'd raise that. So looking at what that level 4 could be, and again, this is what the grant is for, is to study how.
Well, one of the things we could do immediately, and it'll help us for collecting traffic data, is to put those speed feedback signs up, the ones that tell you how fast you're going.
Okay.
Because they actually they keep track of the speed and the volume.
Oh.
And so that would be like a continuous traffic study that we could be doing. And I think that'll help to alert motorists if they're going too fast.
Yeah.
So we're going to
do it both north and south.
Both northbound and southbound.
And
So
do
we could
it between 53rd and 45th.
Yes.
That's where
Yes,
people
that's where I'm
speed up.
anticipating.
But that's a very effective tool, and that kind of feeds into Jennifer's concern, and the main concern that's expressed here is the safety of the bicycle. And I think one gentleman made that correlation between speed and accidents. And if we can take these minor steps to reduce speed, volume is another thing. But but reducing the speed is critical. And I don't think we can wait, with all due respect to Sherwin-Williams, I don't think we can wait on reducing speed things until 2016. We should be looking at that in a more timely fashion.
Yeah, I agree.
And Jennifer, if I could
Yeah.
say one more thing.
And then I have a question for the chief.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody for coming this morning. I think we have people in this town that have great ideas and aren't afraid to speak up, and it's absolutely exceptional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel the same way. I feel like I've learned a lot today, so that's really helpful. Chief James, my question to you is about enforcement, which is another question that came to me also by email. And whatever we do, whether it's speed or, I mean, we can't enforce volumes and say, you're number 2,897 today, you know. But we can enforce speed, and we can enforce if there was a diversion of sorts. We have that at 47th. What does that look like for the police and efforts, and how can we, do we have capacity basically to enforce whatever we put in?
It's amazing that when there is a black and white police car in the area, there is very little violations of the law, including speed. So, because I was thinking of this hearing about the enforcement issues, when we make an effort in an area, we have very, very little enforcement that we need to do because people see a cop and they slow down. Do we have the capacity? Yes, we do. We would make the capacity to try to deal with it. But like I said, when we find that we're on an effort to reduce speeds and find violations, we don't find them very much.
Okay. Great. And currently on Horton, is this you know, are there speeding tickets given out on Horton? We hear about folks going really fast.
I don't
No.
know.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you. I don't review every citation, so I couldn't tell you. We can certainly look into it and see how much we have.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. one final
So
question.
is the study the idea to divert the traffic to streets that can handle it the most in order, in the effort to limit traffic on the streets where there are the bikers? Because, the idea would be maybe to shove it over to Hollis. I don't know, cars speed down Hollis. So I'm wondering, is that part of the study, is to identify the streets that will handle it
Well,
better?
the study you're talking about perhaps is the Sherwin-Williams study, or you're talking about the city just, looking at the next step?
just safety and.
I feel like at some point there's just a capacity issue for the entire town.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah, we're talking
that's
about
my stepping back question about what are we doing about, encouraging or discouraging folks from driving to Emeryville. But in terms of the study, it's hard to know what this would mean for Hollis, and I think that's a really valid point that people have raised. Speaking with Maurice just before the meeting, 45th in Hollis, as you know, there's a stop sign currently there, and there's often a lot of backup. I heard this from another person who's here today by email, that can just be completely impacted. And again, I don't know if it would be 2018 when Sherwin-Williams is coming online, but at some point there will be a need for a signal there, and that would change again.
In those signs that Maurice were talking about, the ones that check your speed, if we do divert cars over to Hollis, keep them slowed down because cars fly down Hollis. Really.
Yeah. I see a few more comments. Bryce and Craig? Yeah.
So when you divert traffic, go ahead.
Sorry.
When you divert traffic, you use diversion or speed bumps. I prefer the speed bumps because it's diverting you away from that street which has the speed bumps. The diversions buttons, they usually occur at the intersection. I think that's very dangerous.
Yeah.
First time I came upon was, I didn't realize you had to circle around. I just kind of cut to the left, and if there was a car was coming across traffic, that would have been high risk. But, also, they're really quite extreme in the construction of them. The speed bumps would slow traffic down, but also discourage people from using that particular street. So instead of a diversion construction, you just have that you want to divert cars away from that particular street. Like you should just have some on the street that you want to divert cars away from. And as far as any more ambitious modifications, I think, again, to iterate, we should be really mindful of the consequences of the 500 units Sherwin-Williams development completion.
Chris?
Something to definitely know about traffic studies, because I've seen a lot of them, is that the consultants that are paid to do them are rarely, if ever, held account for what actually happens, right, compared to the study. Frankly, the only way to really know is to try it out. You have a lot more certainty if you try it out for a year and measure, and make sure that measurement is in the plan, than if you study it and no one's ever accountable for it. Second, someone mentioned that speed bumps cause people to not drive on streets. It also causes people not to cycle on streets. I definitely avoid the streets with those speed bumps. Long term,
I'm sorry. If you can, yeah.
if you can. If you have a little cut in them, that kind of works sometimes, but speed bumps also discourage bicycle traffic. If you really need, you're really out of north-south capacity in Emeryville, the general plan level solution that's never been tried because it's too hard is to slice something off every property along the railroad track and do something along there. It's a pretty clear shot from Aquatic Park all the way down to the IKEA lot along the edge of the railroad. It's never really been explored. That's a different type of thing.
You're saying for a bike path, I assume?
That would be a bike path. It could be a service road or access road as well. But it's certainly a potential right of way that really hasn't been thought about. That's not an urban fabric right of way. It's a different kind of thing. But definitely don't put too much faith in those studies. They don't always work out like it says on sheet 12.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we have a great opportunity. I see your hand, because you haven't spoken.
As a cyclist, it seems counterintuitive to me to put a bike lane on a busy street. And when I'm riding and I see that, when it's specified as a bike boulevard, I go, what the heck are they thinking? And I go on a quiet street. So, you know, the whole discussion is incredulous to me on that basis. I realize that sometimes there may not be other ways to go.
Right.
But generally there is. And you don't even have to go in those busy streets, and you shouldn't in the first place.
So Emeryville is somewhat unique in that we only have, how many I can count on one hand, the north-south streets really that go through in town.
It's always a side street. Almost always.
Almost always, but between Hollis and San Pablo, which is where I live, I've got Hollis and I've got San Pablo.
Good.
Unfortunately, we don't have a bike path going through there, so another question. Mike?
Just one short, obviously, I'm in favor of level 4 and proposed diversion onto Sherwin. If we try level 4 and it does fail, it does occur to me that there's an alternative kind of diversion that may work, which is diverting bicycles rather than cars, since the developers of Sherwin-Williams have already offered to put a bike path along the railroad tracks, which would take all the traffic, so bicycles can come up, turn left on Sherwin, up that bike path, come out north of Novartis, and then if there's a barrier there, to lower traffic volumes north of Stanford, carry on their way. So again, I think it'd be better to have less traffic on Hollis or slower traffic on Hollis. But if we do get to the point where something needs to be diverted, let's remember there are two things that can be diverted, either bikes or cars. And if I'm riding to the Amtrak, I'm going to take the bike path along Sherwin-Williams every day rather than Hollis. No question.
Great, thank you. I think we kind of want to wrap this up. I want to reflect a little bit that I've heard great ideas here today. I've heard a lot of your perspectives from where you live and what you see every day. I still think we need to just look at how do we reduce cars coming to Emeryville, but on the smaller scale, the finer grain here, I hear a lot of support for, since this is temporary and experimental, let's try what we can. I was one who originally thought, let's jump to level 5. I'm hearing a lot of support for level 4 and what that would look like. So that's where I'm feeling right now. I'll reflect on what we've heard, and when it comes to council, of course, we'll have a discussion as well. I don't know if, Nora, do you have any reflections you want to share?
I want to come back and repeat this emphasis on reducing speed,
right,
because that increases safety. And I think that can be done, certainly with what Marie suggested, but we should have in our minds both a long-range plan that has to be after we get more information coming back about Sherwin-Williams and the Banker Marks building. That's a lot of density there, and minor taps on the system are not going to change it. However, I'd like to reiterate, we can't just stop here and say it's overwhelming, we can't do anything. There are things we can do in the interim, and I hope that the council in their wisdom pursues them. So, and thanks again for coming.
And I think we have this real opportunity. Sherwin-Williams, the plans are a year and a half out. We have a big study that's coming, which will give us more. I know we get criticized for studying studies, but I think it's important to have the data that we need. Experimental level 4 now, experimental if necessary, level 5 when Sherwin-Williams comes on. It is a long term. There's a short term and a long term need to look at this. So.
Well, and I'd like to make a comment. What Marie suggested with the little box that says how fast you're going, that does not need even an okay by the council, does it? But that's something that, like we put one out on Powell Street.
That doesn't mean no okay by the council.
It's something, it's a minor thing, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference. How long is it going to take you to get 2 more boxes?
We're researching which model we want and trying to get one that's going to collect the data the way we want.
And it's going to operate on solar.
Correct.
Very
so
good.
by Halloween?
Well, that might be a little bit too quick.
Okay.
We're working
By
on it.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, let's make it a goal.
All right.
That sounds great.
We accomplished something here today, folks.
I just want to say thanks for coming again. It's wonderful to have your input. I still